Hello and welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Nawreen. In today's bulletin, we will present top and trending news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Donald Trump described Pentagon plan of attack and shared classified map, indictment says. White House says Iran is helping Russia build a drone factory east of Moscow for the war in Ukraine. Blinken to take delayed China trip this month, reports say. Biden to attend first 2024 rally in Pennsylvania next week as campaign plots flurry of fundraising. Biden in North Carolina to push clean energy agenda and promote order aiding military spouses. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was GOP Christian voters but stays tight-lipped on his own Catholic faith. Republican Representative Gallagher won't run for U.S. Senate in Wisconsin, leaving open field. U.S. announces new $2.1 billion package of military aid to Ukraine. Like U.S., UN suspends Ethiopia food aid over diversion of supplies. U.S. bans imports from China-based Nine-Star Corp over Uyghurs. Boris Johnson quits as UK lawmaker after being told he will be sanctioned for misleading Parliament. Putin says Russian tactical nuclear weapons to be deployed to Belarus next month. Dutch Supreme Court orders museum artifacts borrowed by Crimea returned to Ukraine. South Korea summons China's envoy over comments accusing Seoul of tilting excessively toward US. Djokovic beats cramping Alcaraz to reach French Open final. And Blue Jays cut pitcher Anthony Bass after latest anti-LGBTQ+ comments. You are listening to Headlines, now news in detail. Former President Donald Trump described the Pentagon plan of attack and shared a classified map related to a military operation, according to a sweeping 37-count felony indictment related to the mishandling of classified documents that was unsealed Friday and that could instantly reshape the 2024 presidential race. The indictment paints a damning portrait of Trump's treatment of sensitive information, accusing him of willfully defying Justice Department demands to return documents he had taken from the White House to Mar-a-Lago and even enlisting aides in his efforts to hide the records and even telling his lawyers that we wanted to defy a subpoena for the materials stored in his estate. I don't want anybody looking through my boxes, one of Trump's lawyers described the former president saying, according to the indictment. He also asked if it would be better if we just told them we don't have anything here. Startling in scope and in the breadth of allegations, the indictment is built on Trump's own words and actions as recounted to prosecutors by lawyers, close aides, and other witnesses. Totaling nearly 50 pages, the detailed charging document with allegations that Trump not only intentionally possessed classified documents but also cavalierly and boastfully showed them off to visitors is likely to be harder for fellow Republicans to attack than an earlier New York case derided by some analysts as weak. The indictment includes 37 counts, including willful retention of national defense information, obstruction, and false statements that taken together could result in a years-long prison sentence. Trump is due to make his first court appearance Tuesday in federal court in Miami, where the case was filed. Iran is providing Russia with materials to build a drone manufacturing plant east of Moscow as the Kremlin looks to lock in a steady supply of weaponry for its ongoing invasion of Ukraine, according to a U.S. intelligence finding released by the White House on Friday. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said U.S. intelligence officials believe a plant in Russia's Elburg Special Economic Zone could be operational early next year. The White House also released satellite imagery taken in April of the industrial location, several hundred miles east of Moscow, where it believes the plant will probably be built. President Joe Biden's administration publicly stated in December that it believed Tehran and Moscow were considering standing up a drone assembly line in Russia for the Ukraine war. The new intelligence suggests that the project in the Elburg region of Tatarstan has moved beyond conception. Iran has said it provided drones to Russia before the start of the war, but not since. Kirby said that U.S. officials also have determined that Iran continues to supply the Russian military with one-way attack drones made in Iran. The drones are shipped via the Caspian Sea from Amirabad in Iran to Makhachkala, Russia, and then are used by Russian forces against Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected to travel to China this month on a long-delayed trip, U.S. media outlets have reported, as the top United States diplomat seeks to improve his country's strained relationship with Beijing. Citing unnamed U.S. officials, the Associated Press reported on Friday that Blinken expects to be in the Chinese capital on June 18 for talks with top Chinese officials. That includes Foreign Minister Qin Gang and possibly President Xi Jinping, the news agency said. U.S. media outlet Politico, citing two people familiar with the plans, also reported on Thursday that the trip could take place as soon as next week. Neither the U.S. Department of State nor the Chinese Foreign Ministry have confirmed the trip. Blinken's trip to China was postponed in early February after Washington said a Chinese spy balloon had been spotted over U.S. territory, prompting allegations of surveillance. President Joe Biden next week is set to attend his first political rally since launching his 2024 re-election bid in April, as he steps up his political activity before the end of the fundraising quarter. Biden will attend the rally in Philadelphia on June 17, which will be hosted by area unions, campaign spokesman Kevin Munoz said, a key constituency in a city and state that are crucial to his 2024 prospects. Biden's campaign isn't expected to host its own large-scale rallies until next year, following the timetable followed by former President Barack Obama in 2012. The event comes as Biden is launching on a flurry of fundraising trips this month ahead of the June 30 second quarter fundraising deadline, with stops in Connecticut, Illinois, and California. Biden, who has declined to reveal information on his fundraising haul since launching his candidacy, will report his totals next month to the Federal Election Commission. President Joe Biden Friday signed an executive order that aims to bolster job opportunities for military and veteran spouses whose careers are often disrupted by their loved ones' deployments. Biden is using a visit to the recently renamed Fort Liberty in North Carolina to highlight the order. The order directs agencies to develop a federal government-wide strategic plan on hiring and job retention for military spouses, bolster childcare options, improve the collection of data on military and veteran spouses, caregivers, and survivors in the federal workforce, and more than a dozen additional actions. First Lady Jill Biden, in a call with reporters to preview the action, said the order was largely framed by conversations through the White House's Joining Forces initiative, which looks to support families, caregivers, and survivors of members of the U.S. military. As Ron DeSantis wrapped up a 12-stop campaign tour that began in an Iowa evangelical church and ended here in a South Carolina convention center, dozens of pastors met backstage to pray for the presidential candidate. Later, to the 1,500 people in the auditorium, DeSantis closed out his stump speech with a paraphrased Bible verse, "I will fight the good fight, I will finish the race, and I will keep the faith." The governor's religious rhetoric and hard-charging policies are at the center of his outreach to white evangelicals, an important voting bloc in the early GOP nominating contest. And yet, when it comes to his own Catholicism, the culture warrior is much more guarded, rarely mentioning the specifics of his faith and practice. Birch argues DeSantis' policies are the true measure of his faith, from Florida's 6-week abortion ban to a spate of laws targeting LGBTQ+ rights and gender-affirming care. Perhaps a good scripture reference that may describe him is, "By their fruits you shall know them." DeSantis officially entered the presidential race last month and is the leading alternative to former President Donald Trump, who remains the dominant force in the GOP for now. But if the Florida governor captures the Republican nomination and takes on Joe Biden, two Catholic presidential candidates will face off for the first time in U.S. history. Wisconsin Republican U.S. Representative Mike Gallagher announced Friday that he won't run for U.S. Senate in 2024 against Democratic U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin, leaving an open GOP field with no declared candidates in the battleground state. Gallagher was the highest-profile Republican said to be considering a run against Baldwin, who is seeking a third term after an 11-point win in 2018. Baldwin is viewed as a formidable opponent due to her strong showing 6 years ago, her high profile across the state, and her ability to raise money. Democrats, including Baldwin, are defending 23 seats in the U.S. Senate in 2024, including 2 held by independents who caucus with Democrats. That's compared with just 10 seats that Republicans hope to keep in their column. Wisconsin's other senator, Republican Ron Johnson, narrowly won re-election to a third term in November. Baldwin will be on the ballot in a presidential year in a state where 4 of the past 6 presidential elections have been decided by less than a percentage point. The Pentagon announced Friday that it will provide an additional $2.1 billion in long-term weapons aid for Ukraine. The new assistance package will include funding for more Patriot missile battery munitions, Hawk air defense systems and missiles, and small Puma drones that can be launched by hand. The latest infusion of funding, one of the larger packages the U.S. has provided, comes as there are signs that Ukraine is beginning or about to begin the much-anticipated counteroffensive to try to take back territory that has been seized by Russia. Unlike the U.S. equipment, weapons, and ammunition that are more frequently sent from Pentagon stocks and delivered quickly to Ukraine, this money would be provided under the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative and is meant to be spent over the coming months or even years to ensure Ukraine's future security needs. In a statement, the Pentagon said the package shows America's continued commitment to both Ukraine's critical near-term capabilities as well as the enduring capacity of Ukraine's armed forces to defend its territory and deter Russian aggression over the long term. Now it's time for global updates. The United Nations World Food Programme has said it is temporarily suspending food aid to Ethiopia because its suppliers are being diverted, a day after the United States Agency for International Development said it was doing the same. Food diversion is absolutely unacceptable, and we welcome the government of Ethiopia's commitment to investigate and hold accountable those responsible, WFP Executive Director Cindy Makin said on Friday. Some 20 million Ethiopians rely on food aid because of drought and conflict, out of the country's population of roughly 120 million. Much of the aid comes from US aid and the WFP. The suspensions brought fears that malnutrition could rise in Africa's second most populous country. USAID, WFP, and the Ethiopian government have not said who is responsible for the food diversion, which the US has described as widespread and coordinated. The United States on Friday banned imports from China-based printer maker Ninester Corp and a chemical company over alleged human rights abuses in China, according to a post for the Federal Register. Ninester, whose website says it is the world's fourth largest laser printer manufacturer, and Xinjiang Zhongtai Chemical Co. Limited are being kept out of the US supply chain for participating in business practices that target China's Uyghurs and other persecuted groups. The US Department of Homeland Security said in a statement. The companies could not immediately be reached for comment. UN experts and rights groups have estimated that more than 1 million people, mainly Uyghurs and Muslim minorities, have been detained in camps in China's western Xinjiang region in recent years, with many saying they were subject to ideological training and abuse. China has denied all accusations of abuse. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson shocked Britain on Friday by quitting as a lawmaker after being told he will be sanctioned for misleading Parliament. Johnson quit after receiving the results of an investigation by lawmakers over misleading statements he made to Parliament about Partygate. In a statement, he accused opponents of trying to drive him out. He said he had received a letter from the Privileged Committee making it clear, much to my amazement, that they are determined to use the proceedings against me to drive me out of Parliament. He called the committee a kangaroo court. The resignation will trigger a special election to replace Johnson as a lawmaker for a suburban London seat. Johnson, whose career has been a roller coaster of scandals and comebacks, led the Conservatives to a landslide victory in 2019 but was forced out by his own party less than 3 years later. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Friday that Moscow will deploy some of its tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus next month, a move that the Belarusian opposition described as an attempt to blackmail the West. Putin said during a meeting with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko that work on building facilities for the nuclear weapons will be completed by July 7 to 8, and they will be moved to the territory of Russia's neighbor and ally quickly after that. The move comes as Ukraine has stepped up attacks in several sectors of the front line in what some observers see as the start of its long-expected counter-offensive. Russia used Belarus territory to send its troops into Ukraine on February 24, 2022, and has kept forces and weapons on the territory of its ally. Everything is proceeding as planned, Putin said in televised remarks as he hosted Lukashenko at his residence in the Black Sea resort of Sochi. On July 7 to 8, the preparations of the relevant facilities will be completed, and we will immediately start the activities linked to the deployment of those weapons on your territory. Tactical nuclear weapons are intended to destroy enemy troops and weapons on the battlefield. They have a relatively short range and a much lower yield than nuclear warheads fitted to long-range strategic missiles that are capable of obliterating whole cities. The Supreme Court of the Netherlands on Friday ordered that a Dutch museum's trove of historical treasures from Crimea be sent to Ukraine, upholding a lower court ruling that the 300 artifacts are part of Ukraine's cultural heritage. The collection of archaeological objects, some more than 2,000 years old, was on display at the Allard Pearson Museum in Amsterdam when Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine in 2014, sparking a dispute over the repatriation of the borrowed pieces. Both the Ukrainian government in Kiev and the four Crimean museums that had loaned bronze swords, golden helmets, precious gems, and other artifacts to the Allard Pearson demanded the objects back. The Amsterdam Museum instead opted to store the items until a court could decide their fate. The legal tug-of-war has now ended with the Hague-based Supreme Court ordering the collection to be returned to Ukraine. Judges cited the lack of national recognition for the Russia-annexed Autonomous Republic of Crimea. South Korea's foreign ministry summoned China's ambassador on Friday to protest comments he made accusing Seoul of tilting toward the United States and away from China, as competition between Washington and Beijing for global influence intensifies. South Korean First Vice Foreign Minister Chang Ho-jin warned Chinese Ambassador Jing Haiming over his senseless and provocative remarks made during a meeting with a South Korean opposition leader. The ministry accused Jing of violating diplomatic protocols and interfering with South Korean domestic politics, but didn't specify the parts of Jing's comments it saw as inappropriate. The ministry also didn't share what Jing said in a reply to Chang. In a meeting Thursday with South Korean Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung, a key rival of conservative President Yoon Suk-yeol, Jing accused Yoon's government of leaning excessively towards Seoul's treaty ally, the United States, and damaging its relations with China, its biggest trading partner. Jing said South Korea was entirely to blame for the many difficulties in bilateral relations, citing its growing trade deficit with China, which he attributed to de-Chinization efforts, apparently referring to actions by South Korean companies to shift their supply chains away from China. He demanded that Seoul respect Beijing's core interests, including Taiwan and other major regional issues. Now it's time for business news. Today's New York stock close price is 15,499.91. The NYSE Composite is decreased by 2.73 points or 0.02%. Tokyo stock close price is 32,265.17. The Nikkei 225 index is increased by 623.90 points or 1.97%. Shanghai stock close price is 3,231.41. The Shanghai index is increased by 17.82 points or 0.55%. Hong Kong stock close price is 19,389.95. The Hang Seng index is increased by 90.77 points or 0.47%. Bombay stock close price is 62,625.63. The Sensex index is decreased by 223.01 points or 0.35%. Let's have a look on today's sports stories. Serbia's Novak Djokovic defeated cramping Carlos Alcaraz 6-2, 5-7, 6-1, 6-1 to become the second oldest men's finalist in French Open history and close in on a record 23rd Grand Slam title. The 36-year-old Djokovic, a two-time Roland Garros champion, will break the record he shares with Rafael Nadal for the most men's Grand Slam titles if he beats Casper Ruud or Alexander Zverev in Sunday's final. First and foremost, I have to say tough luck for Carlos, because at this level, the last thing you want is cramp, physical problems at the last stages of Grand Slam, said Djokovic on Thursday after winning the semi-final. The Toronto Blue Jays cut pitcher Anthony Bass on Friday, one day after the right-handed reliever said he didn't think an anti-LGBTQ+ social media post he shared last month was hateful. The move came hours before Bass was set to catch a ceremonial first pitch from Toronto LGBTQ+ activist Leslie Leacam before Friday's game against Minnesota as the Blue Jays begin their fourth annual Pride Weekend celebration. The team now has 7 days to trade Bass or put him on waivers. Bass apologized before a May 30 game against Milwaukee, one day after sharing a post on his Instagram calling for anti-LGBTQ+ boycotts of Target and Bud Light over support they showed for the LGBTQ+ community. Both companies are dealing with fallout from those campaigns, which have included hostile and homophobic criticisms and calls from LGBTQ+ activists not to cave to the pressure. Bass, who was booed by Toronto fans in his 2 home appearances since the apology, spoke to a group of media before Thursday's win over Houston, saying he stood by his personal beliefs. Let's have a look on today's weather forecast. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest update. Millennium TV USA and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all LED TV such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV, and also in all European countries and Australia, available with Sky Network, Worldwide Jagu TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jagu BD Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.